Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but it's actually about you.
And we won't ever forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
Now more than ever, it's important to hear
all sides as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, happy Saturday, one and all. It's 9 o'clock. On television, on radio and online, in the United Kingdom and across the world, this is Mark Dolan Tonight, your perfect Saturday night in. In my big opinion, enough is enough. Joe Biden must be impeached on the grounds of poor health. The safety of America and the free world depends on it. In the big story, what has happened to missing BBC star and TV doctor Michael Mosley? Can he be rescued? What are the chances of good news? I'll be asking one of the country's leading former top detectives. And should Nigel Farage throw the cat among the pigeons and do an 11th hour deal with Rishi Sunak before polling day? I'll be asking the co-founder of Vote Leave and the country's only ever UKIP MP, Douglas Carswell. And in my take at 10, I'll be dealing with the arrogance and double standards of showbiz lovey Stephen Fry. And I won't be pulling my punches. Mark Dolan Tonight, your perfect Saturday night in. We've got a golden rule on this show. We don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Lots to get through. Joe Biden after the news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Mark, thank you. The top stories this hour. The new CCTV footage has now been released, showing TV doctor Michael Mosley before he went missing on the Greek island of Symi. The 67-year-old was seen in CCTV footage in the village of Pedi on Wednesday. And now this newly released footage shows him walking by himself on Symi Marina on the 5th of June. An emergency helicopter arrived on the Greek island today as efforts focused on the mountainous terrain where he's believed to have been walking amid very high temperatures. Michael Mosley's wife says his family will not lose hope as the search continues. Rishi Sunak says it's a huge relief to see the return of some hostages who were kidnapped in Hamas's attack in Israel on the 7th of October. Noah Argamani, Almog Mirjan, Andriy Kozlov and Shlomi Ziv were recovered by the IDF. The Prime Minister has posted on X saying it's heartwarming to see the pictures of them being reunited with their families. And this is the moment that some of the hostages disembarked a helicopter as a part of that rescue mission. They were welcomed by cheering crowds. And that rescue operation took place in central Gaza's Al-Nusrat, in the heart of a residential neighbourhood. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited the hostages and their families in hospital. He says his country will not give in to terrorism and that he remains committed to bringing all of the hostages home. Labour has criticised the Prime Minister for, quote, dodging media questions on today's campaign trail as the fallout continues over his early return from D-Day events in Normandy. An opportunity for reporters to quiz the Prime Minister did not take place as was originally planned. Rishi Sunak did receive a warm welcome, though, as he visited the gardens at Auckland Castle, where he spent time meeting with volunteers. He also spoke to people at a village fete in a North Yorkshire village in his Richmond constituency. And that visit also comes as the Prime Minister unveiled plans to boost home ownership with a pledge to axe stamp duty for some first-time buyers on homes up to £425,000. Meanwhile, House of Commons leader Penny Mordaunt was criticised last night during a televised debate for repeating the claim that Labour would increase taxes. Sir Keir Starmer now says Labour's manifesto is complete and insists there'll be no tax surprises.
Well, we finalised our manifesto yesterday, which was a great moment because at the end of the meeting it was acclaimed by everybody in the meeting. And, you know, good manifestos are those that tell a story about the country and those that succeed. Everything in our manifesto won't be any surprises on tax. All of our plans fully costed, fully funded, and none of them involving tax rises over and above those that we've already set out.
And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning that QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now back to Mark.
Isn't it love to have Tatiana back? Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. We've got a brilliant 2 hours. And don't forget the most important part of the show, your views. They come straight to my laptop, gbnews.com/your say. And tonight's top pundits, Nina Mishkov, Christopher Biggins and Neil Wallace, all present and correct. Now, don't forget, I'll be dealing with the wild hypocrisy and double standards of showbiz lovey Stephen Fry in my take at 10 in 1 hour's time. But we start with my big opinion. History teaches us that when times are tough, you need great leadership. Abraham Lincoln, Queen Victoria, Winston Churchill, Martin Luther King, Margaret Thatcher, Nelson Mandela, Mikhail Gorbachev, Ronald Reagan. Unfortunately, as the world descends into crisis with the powder keg of the Middle East erupting, who do we have in post as the leader of the free world, the commander-in-chief of the biggest military on the planet? Confused Joe Biden. A man so decrepit he made the heroic D-Day veterans this week look like sprightly teenagers. Yes, it was embarrassing that our own Prime Minister made such a swift exit from the 80-year anniversary this week, but most Americans will be regretting that their president stayed for so long, especially after this embarrassing display.
Distinguished guests, please welcome the Honourable Lloyd J.
I love his wife's nervous scratch of the nose. Nothing to see here, folks. Now, I'm sure he's a nice man, and I wish him well in retirement. This is not ageism. Winston Churchill was still an intellectual giant at 81. Rupert Murdoch, my old boss, still going strong and just remarried at 93. For Joe Biden, this is cognitive decline. And it strikes me as cruel and unfair on him that we continue with this charade. And shame on the Democratic Party in America for providing him as a candidate in 2020, when even then he was clearly unfit for the job. And for gaslighting the public now, by pretending that everything's fine, nothing to see here, perpetuating the risible idea that somehow he calls the shots and makes the decisions. Do me a favour. You won't see this on biased CNN or even on the BBC here, but here are some of Joe Biden's greatest hits, or should I say misses.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was in the foothills of the Himalayas with Xi Jinping. The percentage of women who register to vote and cast a ballot is consistently higher than the percentage of the men who do so. End of quote. Repeat the line. We're going to seize their yachts, their luxury homes, and other ill-begotten gains of Putin's kleptocracy. Kleptocracy and the guys who are the kleptocracies.
Well done to producer Lottie for putting together that horror show. Worrying, to say the least. Let's have a look at the president's in-tray at home. Crumbling cities, lawlessness, a public health crisis caused by obesity, epidemic levels of drug use, a government so mired in debt it makes Bernard Madoff look positively prudent, and insane wokery suffused into the country's once great public institutions. And what about Biden's challenges abroad? Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine, the hot mess that is Afghanistan, from which Biden pulled America out so embarrassingly, gifting murderous Taliban thugs billions of dollars worth of weapons and a mineral-rich country. There is the growth of China, who looks set to overtake America militarily and economically in the years to come. Joe Biden has to work out what to do as an increasingly belligerent Beijing casts its avaricious eye over Taiwan. And then there is the Middle East, with the worst terror attack on Jewish people since the Holocaust, October the 7th, and a death cult in the form of Hamas, whose supporters pervade the region, with the dangerous Iranian regime among their biggest cheerleaders. Perhaps, therefore, it wasn't such a great idea for Joe Biden to send all of those billions of dollars to Iran after all. In what is a dark time for America and the world, we need great leadership in the White House. Instead, we've got a guy that gets lost on his way into that famous building. There he is, wandering into the bushes with his security just absolutely clueless as to what to do. Would Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine have happened under stronger leadership in Washington? Let's be honest, Putin is hardly afraid of Biden, is he? In my view, having this frankly unwell man in charge is an open door to all tyrants to have a go and try their luck. Biden's supporters say that he's got good people around him. Well, is that how democracy works? Did the American people vote for a bunch of interns, backroom boys and policy wonks to actually run the country? Joe Biden must be impeached or removed from office on the grounds of ill health. Joe Biden shouldn't be sat in the Oval Office. He should be sat in a care home, nursing a lukewarm cup of tea, eating soft biscuits and watching endless reruns of the Golden Girls, who look like they were in their first flush of youth compared to this mumbling, incoherent bag of bones that is the president. I'm not sure that Biden could control his bladder, let alone the country. This confused man in the White House is a profound and existential danger to the West. Our enemies are laughing and plotting. Joe Biden is an accident waiting to happen, and I don't just mean in his trousers. Your reaction, gbnews.com/your say. But first, my top pundits. We have the fantastic, fearless journalist, Nina Mishkov. She won't be censored. Showbiz legend, actor and presenter Christopher Biggins, and Fleet Street icon, former national newspaper editor, the man with the inside track on all the big stories of the day, Neil Wallace. Lovely to see all three of you. Nina, welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. Looking pretty in pink. Am I allowed to say that?
Yes, you are, certainly. You're encouraged to say it.
Well, I'm pleased to hear that. Listen, I know that your political leanings would be towards Joe Biden. Yep. I don't think this is about politics. I think this is about health. I think he should be removed because he's not up to the job. What's your view?
I think you've been rather unkind to him, in fact. There are, you know, it's very easy.
That was the plan.
Yep. I think, you know, it's very easy to take pot shots at him. But I'm going to give him a bit of support. First of all, he's had a stutter all his life, which he's had to deal with. And when you have a stutter, you're using that part of the brain to control that, and then you can't have that much brain to do everything else.
Sure.
The state of America is not as bad as you say. Of course, there's the drug problem, there's obesity, there's all... Those aren't generally just his problems. And he has managed to bring... he's created more jobs than anybody else.
Got the economy growing.
Got the economy growing, inflation down. He's got a big rebuilding programme. And, you know, he's generally done pretty well on that sort of thing. His State of the Union address, which was over an hour, there was not one verbal slip-up. Now, you can't...
That's because it was scripted. Even if he was reading it from a prompter.
Even if he's reading it from a prompter, if he wasn't that coherent, he would still make mistakes. And while we're talking about... What about Trump? Trump is slurring. Trump actually mistook Obama for Biden. He mixed
a lot of people do, politically.
And also, you know, they look so alike, don't they? Plus, he also mistook Nikki Haley for Nancy Pelosi. I mean, this is, you know, and there's a neurological difference between what's known as retrieval failure and actually forgetting with a capital. Retrieval failure is when you're searching for a word or a person's name, and because you're older, you take longer to get to it, but you get to it eventually. Forgetting is just forgetting and wiping out.
OK, well, Biggins, I don't think this is about politics or about age. I think that Joe Biden is not mentally fit to be president, and I think it's a threat not just to Americans, but to the free world.
I agree with you. And how old is he, in fact?
He is about 79. He's in his late 70s.
I thought he was 90 or something.
No, he just looks it.
No, he don't.
Yeah, producer Mark will clarify. He's in his late 70s.
Really? Well,
well, so am I.
A few years older than Donald Trump.
Well, I'm 75. I suppose...
I'm 78.
Are you really?
Yes,
You're very good on it.
Oh, my goodness, I stand corrected. He is 81.
Yeah, I thought he was in his that sort of... I think...
Harrison Ford's the same age. Paul McCartney.
Well, make Harrison Ford president, because I think he'd do a better job. This is my concern. This is a man, Biggins, with access to the nuclear codes.
I know. But he needs someone else, though, to be with it should the nuclear codes be used, doesn't he?
Well, yes,
he can't do it on his own.
In the end, well, you're shaking your head there, Neil. I mean, he is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces.
You can press that button if he makes the decision.
On his own?
Yeah, absolutely.
The problem is you won't know whether is he nuking Russia or calling his nurse. That's the problem.
Well, that would be the big problem.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think about it? Am I being horribly ageist? Some of my viewers will be furious with what I've said, Neil, today.
I think you can be horrible sometimes. That is quite true.
You know that. Ask Mrs. Dolan.
How can you say that?
That's your private life. But quite seriously, this is a major problem. We've got a terrible situation here in the free world where the man who, as you say, not just about pressing the nuclear button, to be honest, because I don't believe that it will come to that because, you know, mutually assured destruction is a reality. But you do have this guy who has to pilot America into supporting the Ukraine against Putin. Putin is the big issue in this calculation because does Putin think that he's met his match in Joe Biden? I don't believe so for a long way. And the result of which, in recent months, Putin has launched a new invasion. Yeah. The American supply of weaponry has largely dried up.
That's not Biden's fault. Well, that's the Republicans.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't agree with that because I do agree it was the Republicans that blocked it. Yeah. But they blocked it because of Biden's failures in other part of domestic policy about what's happening down on the border. He took his eye off that and concentrated simply on Ukraine. The result of which is Ukraine is now being beaten by Putin. And that, in my view, is down to Biden.
But what is very, very valuable with Biden is that he has decades of experience and he has decades of knowledge, personal knowledge of Putin, of everybody.
Well, actually, he's got decades of being a Neely man.
Well, OK, and I would argue he's had too many decades and it's time to put him out to pasture. But what do you think? Is Joe Biden still fit to be president? We actually put a text poll out on that. I'll bring you the results shortly. But next up in the big story, what has happened to missing BBC star and TV doctor Michael Mosley? I'm such an admirer of this guy. Can he be rescued? What are the chances of good news? We'll be asking one of the country's leading former top detectives next.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
How can we have Britain's Got Talent? A British girl did win.
Yes.
This weekend.
Christmas, her name is.
Yes, Sydney Christmas.
Sydney Christmas.
She's a singer.
Yeah.
I'm guessing she's going to have a Christmas single out.
She's a cruise ship singer and she works in a gym.
First woman to win in 9 years.
Yeah. I mean, I don't watch it anymore.
But some people clearly do. But apparently 5 of the last in the final were not British born or even live here.
Outrageous.
I know. And so why call it Britain's Got Talent?
I know.
It's bizarre, isn't it?
It sums up as well this difference between the British public and most people on the telly.
Yeah.
Because the judges do not notice this lack of British involvement in, or at least if they do notice it, they're not saying anything about it. But the viewers notice the imbalance, and just 4 of the foreign acts made it through to the final in the end. There was a patriotic protest in London on Saturdays. It was described. There was hundreds of thousands of people there. There were students against tyranny were there. There was Tommy Robinson was there, much maligned, divisive figure. But these people would say, we are feeling the need to walk on the streets of this country because we no longer feel we can assert our British identity.
Well, I mean, I think there's a difference between patriotism and xenophobia. And I think patriotism is great, and people like to feel a sense of identity, they feel a sense of belonging, you know, they understand what their flag is for, and they kind of, British values, which we all adhere to. And then there's xenophobia, which is sort of, we hate anyone who's not British. So I think I think that march that we saw at the weekend was actually quite patriotic. I don't think it was xenophobic at all. I think it was a nice sort of... They all seemed very kind of peaceful. And there wasn't any horrible rhetoric or anything like that. Certainly much less horrible rhetoric than we're used to seeing from the pro-Palestinian marches.
The People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. GB News, Britain's election channel.
The big story and Michael Mosley in just a moment. But first, your feedback, your response to my big opinion. Mark, your guest, Nina Mishkov, is misguided. People with dementia can often still read a script, but their cognitive ability is impaired, so cannot make decisions. Piet says, Mark, what about all the Biden crime family corruption? And Wombats Are Nice says something that I think represents the views of all of my pundits tonight, and probably most of you at home. I'm still amazed that in a country the size of the USA, the best candidates they can find are President Biden and Donald Trump. America, get real. This is embarrassing. OK, listen, last but not least, Vicky. Vicky's not pulling her punches. She says, Mark, bring on Donald to shake things up and sort Putin out. Biden has lost the plot. It's time now for the big story, and tonight, following the disappearance of TV doctor and 5'2" diet guru Michael Mosley, his distraught wife Claire has spoken to the Mail on Sunday, where Michael Mosley has a regular health column. She told the paper, it's been 3 days since Michael left the beach to go for a walk, the longest and most unbearable days for myself and my children. The search is ongoing. And our family are so incredibly grateful to the people of Symi, the Greek authorities, and the British consulate, who are working tirelessly to help find Michael. We will not lose hope. So what could have happened, and where could he be? And is there hope that he could still be rescued? Let's speak to leading former detective Kevin Hurley. Kevin, lovely to see you. A devastating story. You don't have all the details of the case, but does anything stand out to you as a likely explanation? Kevin, I don't know if you can hear me. I just wanted to ask you, given your experience as a senior police officer, a top detective, does anything stand out to you as a likely explanation as to what may have happened to this lovely man?
To me, it's most unlikely that sadly, due to his age, and he looks like the kind of guy who challenges himself physically and keeps. He may have had an unfortunate medical episode, and in that temperature, and that's going to be unforgiving, and to be missing now for 3 days, where dehydration is going to be a significant. Those are kind of my thoughts. Medical emergency, fallen, and he's now in a position where he's dehydrated badly. There's always the remote possibility that a venomous snake struck him. But that's...
Is there any chance, Kevin, that criminality could have been at play? Could Michael have been attacked or robbed? Could you rule that out?
I don't think you can rule that out. Consider we're talking broad daylight on a fairly isolated island. Problems are on that island. You can never rule out, but I would tend to move in the degrees of heat, baking sun, and he's not a young man, rather like myself. He could have had an unfortunate medical episode and he's succumbed to the heat, or maybe badly dehydrated. I mean, he's a clever man. He might have sought shade. You know, if he's broken his leg and he's stuck, it'll be difficult to find him, of course, because the rocks will retain the heat if a helicopter flies above him.
Well, listen, let me thank you so much for joining us to discuss that, Kevin. Apologies to my viewers and listeners. A bit of a challenge with the line there, but Kevin Hurley, a former top detective, who has said that the heat would be a deciding factor, which certainly works against Michael Mosley. Let's talk to my pundits about this. I think, well, we're all fans of the guy, aren't we? I'm devoted to him, Nina,
me too.
because I'm very passionate about obesity, which is a big problem in our country. He's one of the pioneers of the low-carbohydrate diet, of what they call intermittent fasting, which sounds very unhealthy, but I don't think it is. You're just eating in a smaller time window. This guy has changed lives, sold millions of books, and now he's gone missing.
He's touched everyone's lives. And I've always joked and said I've always thought he was a god. I think he's just fantastic. He's helped so many people. There are the 5-2 diet, which I've just lost 9 pounds doing that since Easter.
Amazing.
And my brother, who lives in New Zealand, who's a doctor, had to lose a lot of weight quickly for a hip operation, and he lost on the fast 800 diet. He lost 4 stone in less than 4 months.
That's
it was
ridiculous.
Exactly what he needed. But it's also the reversal of diabetics. But the thing is, he had this ability to connect with people. He has this ability to connect with people.
Yeah.
And to make things so much clearer to you, and just give you a simple way of helping yourself. And then, of course, he was a guinea pig. He'd throw himself. He used himself in all sorts of trials.
Yeah.
So, but even things like, should you take turmeric for muscle pain? And he had 3 different, root turmeric, powdered turmeric, or turmeric pills. Which is the most efficacious? Turns out turmeric pills. So, just little things like that. Then also the grand scale of having to reverse diabetes. That to me is beyond anything.
Well, exactly. Mosley is actually the guy that this country needs. We need him up and running. We need him active, because his health message has been very successful for people. The guy's on holiday. This is a tragedy. Can you imagine what his wife's going through?
It must be awful. And, of course, his children are out there now. Yeah. They've flown out there to help their mother.
I think they've got 4 kids, haven't they?
4, yes. But I think the thing is, I'm sure it's to do with the heat.
Yeah.
The heat must have overcome...
35, 40 degrees?
Yes, and I think, you know, perhaps he didn't realise the heat was so bad.
Yeah.
And could have... Then that could have caused his mind to go, and he could have fallen, and there are lots of... The terrain is terrible there, with lots of caves under the terrain. You know, so it could easily that he could have fallen... and into something which is, you know, no one can see where he's fallen.
He was wearing a baseball cap and he had an umbrella, but he also had a rucksack, and hopefully in that rucksack he would have had water.
You would hope. Neil, we talked about this before the show. You've published some of the biggest showbiz stories in the last few decades as a national newspaper editor. How would you be handling this story right now?
Very carefully, but with great great feeling of trepidation.
Yeah.
Because there's so many things in this that ask other questions. So this is a very, very wise guy. He's a famous doctor. He's an experienced doctor. He's aware of how you conduct yourself in public life, as it were.
Correct.
So what I don't understand about this is, as far as I can see, I don't believe that he knows the island tremendously well. They're staying with some friends, apparently.
Right.
What I can't get my head around is why he would suddenly decide to walk back to a place that is quite a long way away, in searing heat.
Up to 3 miles.
With, we don't know whether he had any water or not. Hopefully he did. But he didn't have a mobile telephone. Now, you know, if you're in potentially difficult terrain, that sort of beggars belief to me to a certain extent. And I just wonder whether we've just got an unfortunate whole series of mistakes, frankly. And once you get out in that heat on that kind of hillside, you know, a little umbrella and a cap, the heat just assaults you.
Well, indeed. We can only pray for good news about Michael Mosley. I love the guy. I interviewed him on my old talk radio show. Such a gentleman, and he's changed so many lives. But listen, we'll be watching the news wires. Anything that comes in, you'll be the first to know. But next up, should Nigel Farage throw the cat among the pigeons and do an 11th hour deal with Rishi Sunak before polling day? I'll be asking the co-founder of Vote Leave and the country's only ever UKIP MP, Douglas Carswell, next.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. The weather stays rather mixed across the UK over the next few days, a mixture of sunshine and showers, and staying quite chilly for the time of year too. The cool conditions are all down to a northerly airstream, low pressure anchored towards the northeast of the UK, high pressure out towards the west, and that's generating that northerly flow across all parts. So looking at things in more detail for this evening and through the overnight period, we'll see showers towards the north and northwest of the UK, quite blustery winds, so many of those showers rattling through quite quickly. The rain giving way to more persistent outbreaks as we head into the early hours of Sunday, particularly across Northern Ireland and the southwest of Scotland, whereas across England and Wales the cloud tends to melt away, so it will turn quite chilly here by Sunday morning. In fact, in rural spots we could see temperatures into low single figures, giving a touch of grass frost in one or two places, pretty unusual for this time of the year. Looking at things in more detail for early on Sunday, and towards the northeast of Scotland we'll see a mixture of sunshine and showers, quite a brisk northwesterly winds. Then we run into an area of more persistent rain across Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, parts of northwest England, whereas elsewhere across England and Wales it's set fair, quite a chilly start, but there'll be plenty of sunshine around, and we'll hold on to some sunshine here, certainly through the morning on Sunday before cloud starts to increase from the north. Whereas across Northern Ireland we hold on to outbreaks of rain on and off through the day, and that rain slipping its way southeastwards across southwest Scotland into northern England and eventually parts of North Wales too. Further north it's a case of sunshine and showers towards the far northeast of the UK, and staying chilly here with quite a brisk northerly breeze. Temperatures generally no better than 12 to 14 Celsius, up to 20 though in London, that's 68 in Fahrenheit. As for Monday, we'll see an unsettled picture across England and Wales, certainly through the morning. Outbreaks of rain gradually clearing away to the south and east, giving way to a mixture of sunshine and showers across all parts for the remainder of the day. And with that northerly breeze still in place, it's staying quite chilly for the time of year too. We hold on to a showery picture into the middle part of the coming week, and temperatures stay quite disappointing for the early part of June as well.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
She could have saved Storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides.
As you make your decision in the run-up to polling day.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel. Britain's election channel.
We've been conducting an exclusive Mark Dolan Tonight People's Poll. We've been asking, is Joe Biden fit to be president? Well, the results are damning from our viewers and listeners, because 6.1% say yes and 93.9% say no. I suspect the 6.1% have mild dementia themselves. Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg has urged Rishi Sunak to strike a deal with Nigel Farage before the general election. Successive opinion polls on Wednesday and Thursday showed Reform just 2 percentage points behind the Conservatives. Current projections suggest that Mr Farage's party is on track to cost the Tories dozens of constituencies at the next election, of course, July the 4th, potentially reducing them to fewer than 100 seats. So, could a deal be mutually beneficial, or do Reform UK have enough momentum to go it alone? Let's get the views of former Conservative MP and the country's first ever UKIP MP and the co-founder of Vote Leave, Douglas Carswell. Douglas, great to have you back on the show again. Would an election, hello there, would an election pact, Douglas, suit both sides?
I'm absolutely delighted that Nigel is running in my old seat, and I hope he wins, but absolutely no, there must be no pact. Why? Because the Conservative Party in its current form is not worth preserving. Look, Nigel Farage has spent his entire career doing what the Conservative Party ought to do and then cutting a deal with them because they appear to come to their senses on Brexit and on this and on that, and then regretting it. I think we need to recognise that Conservative voters are not going to get Conservative administration while the current Conservative Party exists. So don't make a deal with them. They cannot be reasoned with. They are not Conservative run as an organisation. There are only a handful of genuine Conservatives in the Conservative Party. It would be madness to do a deal with them. I think we need to see the displacement of the current Conservative Party by a genuine principled centre-right party.
Is there anything that Rishi Sunak could offer to Reform UK that would catch Nigel Farage's eye? I mean, this is a guy that's staring defeat in the face. These are desperate times. Perhaps it's time for desperate measures.
I mean, far be it from me to advise Rishi Sunak. Rishi Sunak's own advisors now seem more intent on parachuting themselves into what I was going to describe as safe Conservative seats, but I'm not sure there is such a thing anymore. No, I mean, I think if I was to advise Rishi Sunak, I would, it's beyond salvation now. Clearly, he is a third-rate political operator. He has incredibly poor judgment, as we saw when he left the D-Day celebrations or the D-Day commemorations early. He's failed to do the basic things that a Conservative administration should do: control the borders, reduce the size of government, lower taxes. I just don't think there's any good outcome for him and for his party. There's something tragicomic about the whole thing. I mean, having removed and conspired to remove Boris Johnson, who had a massive majority and a massive popular mandate these third-raters are now getting their comeuppance. I mean, you know, it's karma. I don't think there's anything that can or should be done to stop the inevitable annihilation. And the sooner July 4th happens, the better.
Of course, Rishi Sunak would argue he is a true Conservative. He has reduced illegal boat crossings by about 30%. He has started to reduce taxes, national insurance, £900 a year for working Brits. He's got inflation down, and I think the economy is growing at around the top end of the G7 league table. You've got warm words for Nigel Farage, but Nigel is a divisive figure, unpopular, perhaps arguably, within large portions of the country. Many think that Reform UK may not win a single seat at the election. So why are you backing them so enthusiastically, Douglas?
Well, they may or may not win. I mean, when I left the Conservative Party and ran as a UKIP candidate in Clacton all those years ago for a party that had never previously won a seat, I didn't sit there and make a calculation, am I likely to win? I did happen to win twice, as it were, as it turned out. But I stood by my principles. And despite the fact that the electoral system is massively weighted against reform and a political insurgency of this kind, I think there's a time when you just need to stick to your principles, and this is such a time. Now, you talked about some of the things that Rishi Sunak said he was going to do. One thing particularly caught my eye. There's a promise that they're going to abolish inheritance tax. Interestingly, that was the very thing the Conservative Party in opposition promised that put them ahead of Gordon Brown nearly 14 years ago. Isn't there something comically pathetic about the fact that a party has spent 14 years failing to do what it pledged to do 14 years ago, and in order to stave off electoral oblivion, is now saying it's going to do that thing? I mean, you can't make it up. Every time you hear Rishi Sunak make a concrete pledge to, protect women's spaces, to tackle the woke takeover of our public institutions, to cut taxes, it just makes people think, what's he been doing for all these years? Where's he been for, all of these years? They could have done things to transform this country for the better. They've comprehensively failed.
OK.
And,
well, Douglas, stay with us. Let's bring in my top pundits, if I can, including Nina Mishkov, Crystal Biggins and Neil Wallace. Nina Mishkov, do you think the Conservatives should reach out to Reform UK? Should they do a deal with Nigel Farage and bring the right together? Should the Tories go in a Farage direction?
Look, they're in such a desperate strait, they could go in any direction and still lose. It doesn't make any bit of difference at all at this moment in time. And, Rishi Sunak, having said his thing is, we've got a plan, and the Labour doesn't have a plan. Well, he didn't have a plan when he launched the election. I mean, plan B is always if wet in village hall.
But Nina, would a deal with Nigel Farage have you, as a voice of the left, quaking in your boots?
No, because it'd be way too extreme, and you do not win elections from the extremities.
Do you think Nigel Farage is an extremist?
Yes, he is. Of course, he is.
Where's your evidence for that?
Well, he's further right than most of the Tory party, surely.
OK, Neil Wallace, what do you think? It's kitchen sink time for Rishi Sunak. The guy's got nothing to lose. Does he go to bed with Nigel Farage, so to speak?
The vital word to remember in this is Brexit. Because Brexit was what Nigel Farage basically set up and achieved and won. And that is his appeal. And people give much of the credit now to Boris Johnson, and he deserves credit for it as well. But it was largely a Farage creation. I think the question's the wrong way round in a way, Mark. It's what can Sunak offer Farage to actually get on board? And if I was Farage, particularly thinking back to the last Tory-Lib Dem alliance and the way that worked out for the junior party, I would be holding out for some very, very high stakes indeed, such as the promise of being the Deputy Prime Minister, for instance.
Right.
But I think there are two things happening here. One, the country is at that point that enough is enough. There's been too much gone wrong. And it's not all Rishi Sunak's fault, incidentally. It's ludicrous to blame him for, if you like, the pandemic. It's ludicrous to blame him for the effect of Russia attacking the Ukraine and triggering worldwide inflation. You know, all of these came into it. But the guy with the cards in his hand is Nigel Farage, not least because what an operator when you compare to the piece of wood that is called Keir Starmer and, sadly, a man I've got a lot of time for, Rishi Sunak.
OK, of course, you know, Keir Starmer could point to his lead in the polls, suggesting that he's a lot more charismatic than a piece of wood. He would argue that the country's ready for change. Biggins. Nigel Farage is as hated as he is loved in this country. Would it be wise for Rishi Sunak to do an 11th hour deal?
He's probably the most charismatic out of all the politicians that we have. I think if he doesn't come in on at the end of this, beginning of this election, I think give him 5 years and he'll be there ruling the Conservative Party.
But what would you say to the thousands, maybe millions of people that can't stand Nigel Farage and consider him, Biggins, to have done untold damage to this country?
He has, at least he has personality, and at least he knows what he's saying. I mean, the other night when the BBC, when they were all there shouting at each other like fishwives, the women, he was very, very clever.
All right.
He stands there straight, looks at the camera and says what he means.
Nina, do you agree with that briefly?
No, I don't necessarily agree with that. I mean, the thing is, Nigel Farage, if you look at it from a sane centrist point of view, is a very dangerous man because he is so glib and so brilliant at communicating. And thanks to him, our country, through Brexit,
Douglas,
has been
you get
destroyed.
Sorry to interrupt you, Nina. Douglas, you get the last word.
You say, is Nigel Farage divisive? Well, we've had 20 years of consensus amongst the political establishment that has failed to do the fundamentals for our country and has bankrupted our country. Perhaps it's time for a little bit of divisiveness to undermine the Westminster consensus. I think the Conservative Party problems, if I may say so, are not policy related. They're now personnel. They're just too many third-raters as ministers, too many fourth-raters in the cabinet. You could give them Margaret Thatcher's manifesto and they would still fall flat on their face. The Conservative Party is institutionally incompetent because for 20 or 30 years, it has recruited and elevated and promoted people on the basis of something other than competence. They deserve what they get on July the 4th. The best chance is a new party, like happened in Canada 30 years ago.
Douglas, what a treat to have you on the show. You must join us again soon, live for the United States. There you go, former UKIP MP, the co-founder of Vote Leave, Douglas Carswell. Let's go through the candidates standing in Clacton. Jovan Owusu Nepal, Labour, Giles Watling, Conservative, Matthew Bensilum, Lib Dems, Nigel Farage, Reform, Natasha Osborne, Green Party. OK, folks, coming up in my Take at 10, I'll be dealing with the wild double standards, hypocrisy and arrogance of comedian Stephen Fry. Find out why at 10, you won't want to miss it. But my Mark Meets guest is legendary presenter of Blue Peter and Most Haunted, Yvette Fielding. In her new autobiography, she reveals she was assaulted by Rolf Harris and left alone with Jimmy Savile. She tells her extraordinary story next.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
As he kissed her goodbye with...
Ian Phoenix was in charge of a counter-terrorism group dedicated to bringing peace to Northern Ireland. He was a husband and a father.
He was a real Irishman. He had the twinkly Irish eyes. He enjoyed a good joke. He liked a good glass of wine.
Susan Phoenix first heard of the accident that killed her husband on her car radio.
I was just driving along going, no, no, no. I can still see it. I can still feel it, even 30 years on.
On the 2nd of June, 1994, the Chinook helicopter that was taking them to a peace conference crashed into the side of a mountain on the Mull of Kintyre, killing 4 crew and 25 of the country's top counter-terrorism experts. At a board of inquiry, the Ministry of Defence concluded there was no doubt whatsoever the accident had been caused by the gross negligence of the 2 pilots, Flight Lieutenants Richard Cook and Jonathan Tapper. But there was doubt. Plenty of it. There were no eyewitnesses on that foggy night, no flight data recorder, no voice recorder. It took until 2011 for the Ministry of Defence to admit they had not a shred of evidence. At the time of the crash, systematic errors in the software that controlled the engines had been reported. The MOD had seen its safety budget slashed in the run-up to the accident. In a statement, the Ministry of Defence told GB News, in 2010, the Mull of Kintyre independent review was carried out and the findings were fully accepted. The review did not find new evidence to suggest mechanical failure, and no safety issues with the Chinook Mark II were raised in the report. This weekend, the families have formed the Chinook Justice Campaign. But justice may never come.
The People's Channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In just 15 minutes' time, less than that, 12 minutes, I'll be dealing with the arrogance and double standards of Stephen Fry. That's my take at 10, but first, Mark Meets. And one of the most popular TV broadcasters in the country, Yvette Fielding, who at the age of just 18 became the youngest presenter on the iconic BBC children's programme Blue Peter. Via a stint on I'm a Celebrity, she made the souffle rise twice by producing and presenting the hugely popular British paranormal reality series Most Haunted and a follow-up, Ghost Hunting With. But it doesn't stop there, because her long-awaited autobiography, which is called Scream Queen, is out now. Yvette Fielding, great to see you. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. You started at the BBC in 1983, didn't you, as an actress? How did the Blue Peter gig happen?
Well, first of all, hello, and you're looking mighty fine, may I say.
Oh, from Yvette Fielding, I'll take that.
Well, yes, I did Seaview for 2 series on BBC One, and Biddy Baxter from Blue Peter had seen me on that and kept me in mind for when I was on Blue Peter. And I auditioned twice for that, and I got it the second time. Karen Keating got it the first time, and well-deserved, because she's just absolutely beautiful and stunning.
Most definitely. Listen, you were brilliant on the show. It really kicked off your career. You've said that your time on Blue Peter toughened you up. How so?
I think because for all the years when I've been asked about Blue Peter, and your sort of initial reaction is to say, oh my gosh, it's absolutely wonderful. And it was. But my first year wasn't particularly fabulous, because I was very, very young and I didn't really know what I was doing. I'd never presented a TV show before. So it was really, really hard. And it took me a long time to sort of find my feet and my confidence.
But isn't it the lovely thing about Blue Peter that you can learn on air and that the audience can watch you grow and develop, and you don't have to hide that process of learning somehow? It's the journey, don't you think?
I love the polite way you're saying it. My first year, I was constantly messing up because I was just a nervous wreck. As soon as that light went on in the studio, I was like, because of course there was no auto cue then, there was no earpieces. It was just, you had to learn the script, and then changes would be made minutes before you went live on air. And of course you have to know which camera to look into, and all that was changed. And I was like a scared rabbit in headlights, you know. So yes, I did learn as I went along. And there were some very funny moments where I just froze completely on air or just came out with a load of gobbledygook, but eventually I got there.
Well, I remember watching you and seeing you evolve, and, you know, I think that's a lovely thing, especially these days with television being so airbrushed and overproduced. How did you cope with fame as such a young woman?
didn't really think of it as fame. I did find it a little bit strange. You know, you go to the supermarket and people would be coming up to you and they'd be having a good look at what you got in your trolley, you know, before they checked out it was really you. I just found it very odd. I think my friends found it more peculiar than I did. You know, particularly then, you know, Blue Peter, there were only 4 channels then and it was a big deal. So I think my friends found it strange. I was very popular in nightclubs, though, and going out with my friends, you know, oh, free drinks, my friends would all go, oh, how exciting, you know. But I never took it seriously. I always kept my feet on the ground, and I don't know whether that's to do with my northern roots. I don't know. My dad always used to say, keep your feet on the ground, you know, just keep working hard, get your head down.
And since 2002, yourself and your husband Carl have been producing incredibly successful paranormal TV shows. And I think you're speaking to us from a haunted hall tonight. So what led you into that world of the paranormal?
Oh, gosh, I think it's 23, 24 years ago. Wow. It was literally just a friend that came along to our house. He was dropping some equipment off and he'd stayed at a place called Michelin Priory in East Sussex. And as he was leaving, he went, oh, and it's haunted. And Carl said to me, would you spend the night alone in a haunted house? Whereupon I sort of told him where to go politely. and then he said, well, what about with a crew? And a camera crew? And I went, yeah, that's better. And then we sat up all night and we came up with the idea of Most Haunted. We made the pilot, put all our savings into it. And could we sell it to a TV station? Nobody wanted it at all. Everybody thought it was a ridiculous idea. And then it was literally just a friend of a friend who was a producer who just went, yeah, I'll have it. And he was in charge of Living TV at the time. And it's been sold to over 100 territories around the world. It's insane. And it's still going. It's insane. It's fantastic.
Well, that's it. You've made the souffle not just rise twice, multiple times. You've now got a book out, Scream Queen, which is, you know, all about the paranormal. It's about your TV career, your life growing up. You've had some tough encounters as well. Dreadful human beings, Rolf Harris and Jimmy Savile. I understand that you had a very bad experience with Rolf Harris.
Yeah, it was really weird. We were in the studio and there was just myself and Rolf and we were standing in front of a green screen and they were putting pictures up there of famous artists like Picasso and we had to talk about them. And we had our back to the camera and there was only one cameraman. And they said, let's just have a breather for 2 seconds while we reset. And as they were doing that, I felt this hand on my bum and I froze and I thought, what the heck's going on? And then his hands just continued to grope my backside for quite a while. And I stood frozen and I didn't know what to do because I thought, this is Sir Rolf Harris. What is he doing? And I didn't know what to do. And so I just carried on. And then when we'd finished, I went to the dressing room and the makeup room and the makeup lady was there. And I just went, you'll never guess what's happened to me. And I told them, and they were like, "Oh my God!" And I just went,
disgusting.
It is
disgusting.
Old man. Yeah.
Absolutely horrific. Well, listen, it's all in the book. Let's have a look at the front page of the book, the front cover. Scream Queen, Yvette Fielding. Such a thrill to have you on the show. Come and join us. We'll do another. We'll do part 2. Next up, Stephen Fry. Take it 10. Don't go anywhere.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update for the Met Office for GB News. The weather stays rather mixed across the UK over the next few days, a mixture of sunshine and showers, and staying quite chilly for the time of year too. The cool conditions are all down to a northerly airstream, low pressure anchored towards the northeast of the UK, high pressure out towards the west, and that's generating that northerly flow across all parts. So looking at things in more detail for this evening and through the overnight period, we'll see showers towards the north and northwest of the UK, quite blustery winds, so many of those showers rattling through quite quickly. The rain giving way to more persistent outbreaks as we head into the early hours of Sunday, particularly across Northern Ireland and the southwest of Scotland, whereas across England and Wales the cloud tends to melt away, so it will turn quite chilly here by Sunday morning. In fact, in rural spots we could see temperatures into low single figures, giving a touch of grass frost in 1 or 2 places, pretty unusual for this time of the year. Looking at things in more detail for early on Sunday, and towards the northeast of Scotland we'll see a mixture of sunshine and showers, quite a brisk northwesterly winds. Then we run into an area of more persistent rain across Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, parts of northwest England, whereas elsewhere across England and Wales it's set fair, quite a chilly start, but there'll be plenty of sunshine around, and we'll hold on to some sunshine here, certainly through the morning on Sunday before cloud starts to increase from the north. Whereas across Northern Ireland, we hold on to outbreaks of rain on and off through the day, and that rain slipping its way southeastwards across southwest Scotland into northern England and eventually parts of North Wales too. Further north, it's a case of sunshine and showers towards the far northeast of the UK, and staying chilly here with quite a brisk northerly breeze. Temperatures generally no better than 12 to 14 Celsius, up to 20 though in London, that's 68 in Fahrenheit. As for Monday, we'll see an unsettled picture across England and Wales, certainly through the morning. Outbreaks of rain gradually clearing away to the south and east, giving way to a mixture of sunshine and showers across all parts for the remainder of the day. And with that northerly breeze still in place, it's staying quite chilly for the time of year too. We hold on to a showery picture into the middle part of the coming week, and temperatures stay quite disappointing for the early part of June as well.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're making this summer funner, with 3 incredible prizes to be won. First, a fantastic £15,000 in tax-free cash that you can spend on anything you like. Next, there's the latest iPhone 15 with a brand new set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at the UK attraction of your choice. The summer fun could be on us. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but actually it's about you.
And we won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear
all sides
as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel. Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, it's 10 o'clock in the United Kingdom, across the world. This is Mark Dolan tonight on television, on radio and online. In my take at 10, showing total hypocrisy and wild double standards, comedian Stephen Fry's outrageous remarks about one of the world's oldest cricket clubs is no laughing matter. I'll be dealing with this darling of the pampered, privileged elite in no uncertain terms in just 2 minutes' time. Also tonight, did Prince Harry stay away from a top society wedding in order to avoid seeing his own brother? I'll be asking the Queen of US Royal Reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Plus, in the last word, all of the election latest from our top Fleet Street insider, including a shocking story about the potential turnout on July the 4th. And tomorrow's newspaper front pages and my top pundits. Lots to get through. But Stephen Fry, I'm coming for you after the news headlines and Tatiana Sanchez.
Mark, thank you very much. The top stories this hour. The new CCTV footage has been released showing TV doctor Michael Mosley before he went missing on the Greek island of Symi. The footage shows the 67-year-old walking by himself on Symi Marina on the 5th of June. Symi's mayor says there's no chance the search will be called off until he is found. An emergency helicopter arrived on the Greek island today as the rescue effort continued amid soaring temperatures. One emergency worker said it was a race against time. But Michael's wife says his family will not lose hope. Rishi Sunak says it's a huge relief to see the return of hostages who were kidnapped in Hamas's attack on Israel on the 7th of October. Noah Argamani, Almog Mirjan, Andriy Kozlov and Shlomi Ziv were recovered by the IDF. The Prime Minister has posted on X saying it's heartwarming to see the pictures of them reunited with their families. And this is the moment the hostages disembarked a helicopter welcomed by cheering crowds. The rescue operation took place in central Gaza's Al-Nusrat in the heart of a residential neighbourhood. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited the hostages and their families in hospital. He says he remains committed to bringing all of the hostages home. Labour has criticised the Prime Minister for dodging media questions on today's campaign trail as the fallout continues over his early return from D-Day events in Normandy. An opportunity for reporters to quiz the Prime Minister did not take place as was originally planned. Rishi Sunak did receive a warm welcome, though, as he visited the gardens at Auckland Castle, where he spent time meeting with volunteers. He also spoke to people at a village fete in a North Yorkshire village in his Richmond constituency. The visit also comes as the Prime Minister unveiled plans to boost home ownership with a pledge to act stamp duty for some first-time buyers on homes up to £425,000. Meanwhile, House of Commons leader Penny Mordaunt was criticised last night during a televised debate for repeating the claim that Labour would increase taxes. Sir Keir Starmer now says Labour's manifesto is complete and insists there'll be no tax surprises.
Well, we finalised our manifesto yesterday, which was a great moment because at the end of the meeting it was acclaimed by everybody in the meeting. And, you know, good manifestos are those that tell a story about the country and those that succeed. Everything in our manifesto won't be any surprises on tax. All of our plans fully costed, fully funded, and none of them involving tax rises over and above those that we've already set out.
Some breaking news to bring you now before we go. And 4 people have been injured after a malfunction on a funfair ride in South London. Lambeth Council have said the serious incident happened at the Lambeth Country Show in Brockwell Park. It was reported at about 6:20 today and emergency services arrived quickly. That's according to a spokesperson who also said the injured were taken to nearby hospitals. We'll bring you more as we get it. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now back to Mark.
The brilliant Tatiana Sanchez returns in an hour's time. Welcome to a busy Mark Dolan tonight. Did Prince Harry stay away from a top society wedding in order to avoid seeing his own brother? I'll be asking the Queen of US Royal Reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Plus, in the last word, all of the election latest, including a shocking exclusive about the potential turnout on the 4th of July. Let me tell you, it's not a vote of confidence. We'll be joined by our top Fleet Street insider. Tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction from tonight's top pundits, broadcaster and journalist Nina Mishkov, acting legend Christopher Biggins, and former editor of the News of the World, Neil Wallace. A packed hour, those papers are coming, but first, my take at 10. Another day, another high-profile member of the pampered, privileged elite lets the mask slip and reveals their true colours. Enter stage left, alleged TV funny man Stephen Fry, who has upset members of the iconic Marylebone Cricket Club, or MCC, saying that the privilege and classism of the organisation stinks. Well, it didn't stink, did it, when Fry joined the club, one which is, of course, highly prestigious and which enjoys a 237-year history, when he became a member 13 years ago. It didn't stink when he pounced around the Ashes Test match between England and Australia in his club tie and red velvet blazer. It didn't stink when he held court at decadent dinners in the historic Long Room, with cocktails, champagne, port, and the finest cuisine known to man. Privileged is a big word for Stephen Fry, who made his first millions composing the words to hit musical Me and My Girl in the 80s, a far cry from his youth when he was arrested for credit card fraud. But there have been no financial issues since, with Fry having made an absolute fortune selling books, acting, presenting, fronting ad campaigns, and lending his dulcet tones to any number of voiceovers if the price is right. There's been a film career, directing, sketch comedy with Hugh Laurie, and the television adaptation of Jeeves and Wooster. Never unemployed, this guy has had more work over the years than Sharon Osbourne. But it's other people, not him, who are privileged, apparently. Fry has fronted lavish documentaries, including one series in which he was basically paid to go on holiday around America. And, of course, he was the extraordinarily knowledgeable host of QI, a knowledge which BBC insiders tell me was helped along with capacious and detailed cue cards compiled by a vast army of researchers. Now, I think Stephen Fry is a massively talented person, and he has produced a huge amount of brilliant work. I'm a big fan. But sadly, others consider Stephen Fry to be a pompous buffoon, not least the fearless journalist Julie Burchill, who called Stephen Fry the stupid person's idea of a clever person on the news website Spiked Online. Here's what she had to say. She wrote, no matter how often Fry trundles out the national treasure shtick, all bumbling and bobbling, he so often reveals himself to be a profoundly arrogant clown. Ouch. I'm afraid it gets worse for Mr. Fry, because he went on to describe his fellow members of the MCC club as, wait for it, beetroot-coloured gentlemen, looking as if they come out of an Edwardian cartoon. Well, this famous millionaire no doubt owns a lot of objects, but a mirror is clearly not one of them. His own robust frame and rosy complexion is damning proof of a life well lived. Crumbs, you can nearly say that he stinks of privilege and classism. Privilege, given his untold fame and wealth, and classism, given the fact that he began his gilded career at Cambridge University, no less, and the celebrated theatrical troupe, the Cambridge Footlights. Not exactly a working men's club in Sheffield, is it? Beetroot-coloured gentleman is particularly problematic, given that it invokes skin colour. You're not supposed to do that, are you? Is he saying that older white gentlemen with a taste for red wine are a bad thing? Would he like to cancel those older white men? And in doing so, does he need to cancel himself? We can but dream. Fry claims that the MCC stinks of privilege and classism, but he made these remarks at the most crushingly middle-class event in the society calendar, the Lovies Mecca, the Hay Literary Festival. A talented guy Mr. Fry is. Man of the people, not so much. The likes of Stephen Fry, and there are many others, want to have their cake and eat it. To enjoy venerated institutions which boast a wonderful tradition, before then undoing those traditions and attacking the whole enterprise. Why? To signal your virtue. He did the same at the iconic Garrick Club, where after years of membership there, he suddenly decided that women should be allowed to join, or he would leave. To enjoy an institution for years, only to attack it and then junk its traditions, is double standards of the highest order. It's like spending a week in a brothel, only to announce on departure that you are now celibate. I don't know what happened to Stephen Fry. He had a great career, but now appears more out of touch than ever. I wonder if all that cocaine he used back in the day has addled his brain. But he's crossed a line here. He's made a right Charlie of himself. He should be given his marching marching orders. This star, famous for the sketch comedy show A Bit of Fry and Laurie, has shown his true self. He is, in fact, a bit of Fry and Wally. Your reaction to Stephen Fry's remarks. gbnews.com/your say. Let's get reaction from tonight's top pundits. Broadcaster and journalist Nina Mishkov, actor and television star Christopher Biggins, and former editor of the News of the World, Neil Wallace. Neil, I'll come to you in a moment, and Nina, but Biggins, you are the showbiz legend on this programme, a much bigger name than Stephen Fry, with a longer career. Your reaction to these remarks?
Well, I have to say that he is absolutely charming. I've always liked him and always respected his work. And the unfortunate thing nowadays, I think, Mark, is it's very difficult to say anything about anybody. And certainly I think this is where he's come unstuck this particular time, because I don't think he's thought it through. But I absolutely adore him. I think he's very clever, and I think it's very unfortunate that all these things are happening now for him.
Of course, Biggins, he has apologised and said I should keep my big mouth shut. There does appear to be... I mean, I don't like cancel culture. I don't think he should be cancelled. I said, is he going to cancel himself? I said that tongue-in-cheek. The guy is going to continue and should continue to have a great career. But I just feel that it was revealing what he had to say.
Well, I think it's revealing what we all have to say, and we make mistakes, and we go to bed that night thinking, why on earth did I say that, and have sleepless nights?
Well, I think he said it, Neil Wallace, because that's what he thinks.
Well, he did at that moment because it suited him to say it. I think he's a pretty loathsome character, to be honest. Not just on the eye, which he is, but intellectually, he's all over the place. And he says whatever he thinks is going to garner him at the headline at the time. Yeah, I thought you got it absolutely spot on when you sort of pointed to the similarity with the Groucho Club. I don't mean the Groucho Club, I mean the Garrett Club, which has been totally banned women through its 100 years or so of existence. And he was quite happy to be a member, and he used to wear the Garrett Club tie until suddenly it became politically advantageous because The Guardian said it was time for women to be admitted to jump on the Guardian bandwagon because that would get him coverage with his fellow lovies. I think he's a total hypocrite, and I think you've done a very good job hammering a nail right into him.
Nina Mishkov, it's very clear that there's a problem of racism in cricket. There have been some shocking examples of late. And perhaps, you know, that game, that sport, clubs like the MCC need to be more diverse, and perhaps that's the point that Stephen Fry was making.
I think when he became president, I think he said that was his aim, to get more diversity. And having said that, you know, we live quite near St John's Wood Tube Station, which is where near Lord's Cricket Ground. And so if you're, you know, anywhere in the area on a cricketing day, you see them all, and he's absolutely accurate. These beetroot-faced men staggering around, pissed, you know, terrible old duffers, you know, and he's being accurate. The problem with what he said is that Stephen is many things. He's very articulate, very intelligent, he's very experienced, he's very educated, he's very erudite. But the thing is, he cannot resist an audience, and he will want to get a laugh out of an audience, and he will have said that to get a laugh, and he will have got a laugh at the Hay Festival. And then, of course, he's got to face all these beetroot-faced duffers that he's
Well, listen, I'm absolutely dumbfounded at your offensive remarks tonight, Nina, about beetroot-faced duffers. I'm only 50, right? And I'm working on being a beetroot-faced duffer myself.
Not hard enough.
Succeeding.
Biggins and Wallace have got a head start. Right? Biggins, thanks to the Groucho Club and God's know where else. And, of course, Neil Wallace, all those pubs in Fleet Street. But listen, you're entitled to your view, and it's worth pointing out that most people consider Stephen Fry to be an absolute national treasure. The reason why he's a multimillionaire and is always on telly and has sold enormous numbers of books is because he is loved by the public. I just don't love these recent remarks, OK? So let me know your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say. Next up, did Prince Harry stay away from a top society wedding in order to avoid his own brother? I'll be asking the Queen of US Royal Reporting, Kinsey Schofield, next.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. GB News, Britain's election channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In places like News Corp, right, an organisation I know reasonably well, when that poor guy died in America,
George Floyd, you're talking about?
Yes, they had a 9-minute silence for him, right? A more absurd and ridiculous idea I'd never come across in my life. How do you feel about 9 minutes for George Floyd?
Well, of course, that's the length of time that he was strangled by a police officer.
I know why it was, but how do you feel about that?
Well, I think a lot of the black staff, in particular in News Corp, probably appreciated the fact that it was taking a stand. And if you look at business...
Why do they need to take a stand about what the police do in the United States
OK, well, what
of
about
America?
the guy... What about the jeweller tonight who has died in Richmond in Surrey when two, how shall we put them, hoodlums of colour actually had a chokehold? He went home and he killed himself. There are lots of things going on in our world, as you well know, which are very upsetting.
OK.
And if we're going to stop every time that somebody dies in unfortunate circumstances, we'll never get any work done.
Well, Stella, a final word to you.
I think sometimes, yes, equality and diversity can be a waste of money when it goes to things that are not necessary for the function of the organisation. But when just last year you had Birmingham Council being pushed into bankruptcy because they were found out to not have given women equal wages,
then because they paid bin men more than they paid cooks.
But then you can see Ben's point that if they had someone who was looking appropriately in equality and diversity and the actual practical policy implications of what they were doing, then maybe you wouldn't have this situation. You wouldn't have this legal liability. That's what Ben is saying. This is a multi-million pounds organisation. Like, it needs to have someone looking seriously and taking responsibility for these decisions.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, a huge reaction to my take at 10. I'll get to your messages about that at 10:30 with the papers. But first, US News with the Queen of American showbiz and royal reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Kinsey, lovely to see you. I think you're going to be in the studio with us next week. Cannot wait. Giddy with excitement. But let's talk about the King and his son, William, united in grief and respecting and honouring our fallen heroes from D-Day 80 years on.
Yes, sir. It was compelling and wonderful to see the King, Prince William, and other world leaders share a stage. This was so inspiring and heartfelt, these D-Day messages. Their words captured the bravery and sacrifice of those who fought for the cause. And it was a powerful reminder of our veterans' courage and dedication. And I believe it deeply moved all who listened to these messages. But again, I mean, it was unique to see all of these world leaders together, especially after COVID, especially when everything's gone digital. To see all of these men together, it was powerful. And and I believe that it was really important that we see the king in this position. This is one of the first times we've really been able to see him take, at such a big event, post that cancer diagnosis.
Most definitely. I mean, that bond between Charles and William must now be unbreakable.
I agree. And I don't know if you remember this, but at the time that the king became the king, there was real concern that Prince William's popularity would be an issue. And it's been such a rescue. It's been such a solution throughout all of this. So I think that the king is likely feeling very blessed that Prince William is such a loved character, because he's able to step in for him when he needs him to.
Most definitely. I thought they were both brilliant at the D-Day anniversary, and I felt very proud as a Brit that Charles was our king and that William was our Prince of Wales. Meanwhile, a little bit of awkwardness at the society wedding of the year. This was the Duke of Westminster, who's one of the richest men in the world, one of the largest landowners in the United Kingdom. A big society wedding. William was there, the Prince of Wales, but a noticeable absentee.
Yes, Prince William was an usher. I mean, and how would you not choose Prince William to be the one there participating in the wedding? He's the heir to the throne. But there were reports about a phone call that happened between Prince Harry and the Duke of Westminster, where Prince Harry said, look, I'm going to sit this one out because I understand that it could potentially be a distraction. And at the end of the day, this was supposed to be Olivia Hinson's big day, and it was an unwelcome distraction. So I'm glad that he set this one out, because aside from Just Stop Oil, thanks guys, it was a beautiful wedding.
Yeah, well, Just Stop Oil, when they were spraying their foam or whatever it was, the smoke, I mean, that's just the modern version of confetti these days. If I got married, I'd be disappointed if they didn't turn up. Listen, it's a shame you weren't there, because you could have caught the bouquet.
Oh, you're absolutely right. That would be number one on my list.
Right, let's talk about a little bit of a legal headache for Prince Harry. His battle for top-level royal protection in the UK continues.
Yes, sir. Prince Harry can and will be able to appeal against the dismissal of his High Court challenge over the decision to challenge the level of his personal security when he visits the UK. We've talked about this multiple times before. Harry just wants the same security he had as a working member of the royal family, or the option to pay for similar security. And in February, a judge rejected Harry's case and determined that Ravik's approach was not irrational or unfair. He said it was and is legally sound. Ravik is willing to provide Harry with the type of security he wants on a case-by-case basis. I personally believe another set of eyeballs will also find Ravik's decision-making process fair, but we're going to have to wait and see Prince Harry continuing to fight the security.
Most definitely. Well, you told my old mate, Kevin O'Sullivan, at Talk that you think this is proof that Harry misses home.
I do. To fight so much, to fight so fiercely, and to spend so much money is absolute proof that Harry wants a foot in the UK, that he misses his old life and wants the option to jump on a plane and go home, see his old friends. I think he likely very much wishes he was at the Duke of Westminster's wedding. And I do think that there are some elements to his old life that he misses, and he even admits that in the Netflix series at the very end.
Well, I would welcome him back with open arms. My red line, though, Kinsey, my deal breaker is two things. First of all, he's got to promise not to do any more silly books or podcasts and throw his family under the bus, and a massive apology. And if that happens, I think blood is thicker than water, and we bring the boy home, at least temporarily. But we can but dream. Speaking of which, Prince Andrew, has he sorted out his accommodation yet? Where does he live these days?
Well, he's living very comfortably at Royal Lodge, but according to the Daily Beast, friends of Prince Andrew are urging King Charles to drop his, quote, cruel campaign to force his black sheep brother to vacate Royal Lodge. They stress that Andrew has every intention of continuing to live on the property and actually intends to leave it to his children, Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie. And they've also accused the palace of not having learned anything post-Megxit and carrying out the same kind of anonymous briefing against Andrew that the Sussexes complained about. So, I don't know. I want to believe that things are fine behind the scenes, Mark, but this story will not go away.
It's a worry. Last but not least, Kinsey, I've had my testicles insured for a lot of money. It seems I'm not alone.
That's right. I was going to specifically ask you about this, so I'm glad you took that stress away from me. Nick Cannon, who's a host here, TV personality, reality star, 12 children by 6 different women. He's a fornicator. You know, if we just wanted to categorize him as something, I believe fornicator is the fair way to go. Has insured his testicles for $10 million. So I guess that we're talking about it. I think that was the ultimate objective. Congratulations to him. I'm going to stay away from him with a 10-foot pole, though.
Glad to hear it. Yeah, 10 foot. I've not heard it's that big. Kinsey, you couldn't be insured for any amount of money, and I believe you're coming to the UK. You're going to be live in the studio this Friday. Am I right?
I will see you then. I can't wait.
Can't wait, face to face. You are a true star. We love having you on the show. My viewers and listeners are addicted to your weekly musings. Let me tell you, you can find Kinsey on a podcast, which is the To Die For Daily podcast, and her website of the same name. That's Kinsey Schofield, live in the studio for Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan on Friday at 8. Coming up, tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction in the studio from my pundit, plus In the Last Word. All of the election latest, plus a devastating exclusive about the potential voter turnout on July the 4th. It doesn't make for pretty reading. We'll be hearing from our top Fleet Street insider. We got the papers, we got a top journalist, and we've got your views next.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. The weather stays rather mixed across the UK over the next few days, a mixture of sunshine and showers, and staying quite chilly for the time of year too. The cool conditions are all down to a northerly airstream, low pressure anchored towards the northeast of the UK, high pressure out towards the west, and that's generating that northerly flow across all parts. So looking at things in more detail for this evening and through the overnight period, we'll see showers towards the north and northwest of the UK, quite blustery winds, so many of those showers rattling through quite quickly. The rain giving way to more persistent outbreaks as we head into the early hours of Sunday, particularly across Northern Ireland and the southwest of Scotland, whereas across England and Wales the cloud tends to melt away, so it will turn quite chilly here by Sunday morning. In fact, in rural spots, we could see temperatures into low single figures, giving a touch of grass frost in one or two places, pretty unusual for this time of the year. Looking at things in more detail for early on Sunday, and towards the northeast of Scotland we'll see a mixture of sunshine and showers, quite a brisk northwesterly winds. Then we run into an area of more persistent rain across Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, parts of northwest England, whereas elsewhere across England and Wales it's set fair, quite a chilly start, but there'll be plenty of sunshine around, and we'll hold on to some sunshine here, certainly through the morning on Sunday before cloud starts to increase from the north. Whereas across Northern Ireland we hold on to outbreaks of rain on and off through the day, and that rain slipping its way southeastwards across southwest Scotland into northern England and eventually parts of North Wales too. Further north it's a case of sunshine and showers towards the far northeast of the UK, and staying chilly here with quite a brisk northerly breeze. Temperatures generally no better than 12 to 14 Celsius, up to 20 though in London, that's 68 in Fahrenheit. As for Monday, we'll see an unsettled picture across England and Wales, certainly through the morning. Outbreaks of rain gradually clearing away to the south and east, giving way to a mixture of sunshine and showers across all parts for the remainder of the day. And with that northerly breeze still in place, it's staying quite chilly for the time of year too. We hold on to a showery picture into the middle part of the coming week, and temperatures stay quite disappointing for the early part of June as well.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the show. It is 10:30, so time for tomorrow's front pages. Brilliant stuff. Let's start with the Sunday Express, and it's the exclusive bombshell claim from Reform boss Nigel Farage. We are now the real opposition. Nigel Farage promised a 6-year master plan to reshape politics today, declaring we're the real opposition now. The Brexit warrior, as described by the paper, and Reform leader, revealed he's on a mission to build a mass movement for lasting change. And he warned he's ready to stage a hostile takeover of the Tories if he wins a seat in the Commons on July the 4th. Look, it's worth giving you a bit more on this. In an exclusive interview with the Sunday Express, he said the election is our beginning. It's the start of a serious attempt to create a coherent party that genuinely believes in this country. It's about establishing a group of people in Westminster who are united on key policies. I won't give up hope, says wife of missing TV doctor. That's Michael Mosley, who is still missing. He's been gone now since Wednesday on a Greek island. The Observer. Labour pledges 80 new rape courts to tackle backlog crisis. A father's embrace. Israeli hostage Noah Argamani is reunited with her father Yaakov after being freed by special forces. And Israel celebrates, that's the headline, celebrates rescue of 4 hostages as airstrikes and raids kill 93 Palestinians. Kind of a loaded headline. I'll get Neil Wallace's thoughts on how that's phrased in just a moment. Mail on Sunday. As the Mail columnist's wife vows the family won't lose hope of finding him alive after their longest and most unbearable days, divers hunt for missing Dr. Mosley in a cave called the Abyss. Sunday Telegraph now. Starmer's net zero plans risk blackouts. Tory manifesto will pledge that climate targets must consider the effect on households. Daring raid frees Nova Festival hostages. Labour will ignore NIMBYs, that's people that say not in my backyard, and build prisons to fix the crowding crisis. And Mosley's wife will not lose hope as hunt for missing doctor intensifies. Sunday Mirror, the same story. TV doc's wife, my unbearable weight. And very good royal news. Princess's kind words. Kate, I hope to be back soon. The Princess of Wales has revealed in an optimistic message that she hopes to return to her public duties very soon. The future Queen, who's having treatment for cancer, wrote to the Irish Guards apologising for missing today's final rehearsal for next week's Trooping of the Colour. Kate, who is Colonel of the regiment, said, I do hope that I'm able to represent you all once again very soon. Please send my very best wishes and good luck to all involved. Daily Star Sunday. Mum hits out at trolls who mock baby's name. I called my son Lucifer, but our lad is not a little devil.
No, also, because did you see this thing, salad cream sickos?
Oh, go on, listen, let's have a look at that. Would you mind firing up this...
Wonder what that is.
Well, let's get to the bottom of that. I'm going to ask producer Mark to sink his teeth into the deep annals of that paper. Salad cream sickos is the headline. It looks like people are putting salad cream on their feet. The thing is, Biggins, isn't salad cream the very best place to be is your foot rather than your tummy, because it's disgusting.
Oh, it's revolting stuff. It's horrible stuff.
Awful. Do you care to defend salad cream, Neil Wallace, former editor of the News of the World?
Not even I would.
OK, folks, listen, let's get...
however.
Let's get
that's very different.
That's different. Bit of mayo. You're so middle class. You've changed. You used to be man of the people, Neil Wallace. Next, you'll be eating avocados and eating couscous. I'm delighted to have my top pundits reacting to the big stories of the day. We have Nina Mishkov, Christopher Biggins and Neil Wallace. Let's go through all of these papers. And how about this in the Express, Neil Wallace? Farage, we are now the real opposition. Nigel Farage has a 6-year master plan to realign UK politics. If anyone can, he can.
I think it's probably true that at this moment, at this stage of the election, the big focus is on Farage, certainly not on Starmer. A struggling Sunak. Farage is just standing tall, and I absolutely believe, however you're going to vote, you can't get away from the fact that he is the only focus is on what he's saying, why he's saying what he's saying. When you watched him in the debate the other night, he just ran that thing. He was head and shoulders above. There's a great point in it where he's talking about everybody else, and he basically said, Of course, all the rest of you reading from you autocues. I'm the one who understands what's going out there with those people.
Yeah.
I haven't got an autocue because I know those people.
Yeah.
And he's right.
That's what makes him so dangerous, because he's a brilliant communicator. He's obviously an incredible strategist, because if you look at how he's positioned things, he got himself onto I'm a Celebrity last year. Now, that was an absolutely brilliant move, because it meant that people saw him on the telly every night.
And they got to know him and they found out he's a very decent guy.
Well, you can keep that up for a while, can't you?
And I bet he paid that girl to throw that coffee over him.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I don't know about that, but she's been arrested for assault.
And incidentally, it was a banana milkshake.
Oh, was it?
But then also, waiting until he declared himself. You know, it took a while, and then he made this announcement at 4 o'clock this afternoon. I'm going to make an announcement. And oh my God, what is he going to say? I'm going to be running. So,
but this is masterful.
It's very clever.
I said it's a brilliant strategy.
Very, very clever.
That's why he's so dangerous. He's so dangerous.
Or simply astute.
Brexit,
How about that instead?
He's wrecked this country with Brexit. And seriously, I fear him.
Where's the wreckage? We're currently top of the G7 for economic growth.
We are a complete
Unemployment
mess.
is low. Inflation's coming down.
Complete mess.
Where's the mess?
Oh, look, OK, give me one real positive that's happened since Brexit.
The UK has leapfrogged France to become number 8 in the world for manufacturing.
Oh, you know, and the rest of us...
not that old thing.
Come on. Oh, come on.
The IMF have projected that we'll be number 2 in the G7 for economic growth over the next 5 years. The IMF.
Not under Rishi Sunak, I can't imagine.
Look, I do understand that small businesses have suffered.
Small businesses have suffered.
I'll give you that.
Look at the creative industries. Our musicians, how can they can't, you know, travel easily to Europe, can they?
No.
Well, that's not the bedrock of the British economy.
It's worth billions. It's worth billions.
Yes, it's worth quite a lot of money.
A lot of money,
but
yes.
The point being that Brexit opened up a lot of possibilities, and we're Farage.
None of which have been really realised.
Well, you're sounding like Nigel Farage now.
No. Where's our trade deal with India? Where's our trade deal with US? None of them is going to happen. We've got a trade deal with the Pacific, which is round the other side of the world, which is going to be worth something about 0.1% in 10 years' time.
Nina always gives us great editorial, and Nina raises an interesting question, which is, if Labour win, which the poll suggests they will, what will they do with Brexit, Biggins?
I don't think they can do a lot.
No, they're not going to be able to...
Is it an easy win for Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer to actually make Brexit a success?
I don't think he's capable.
Why do you say that?
He is a capable man. He's dull. He has a charisma bypass, but he is solid.
He speaks highly of you.
No, seriously, he's a solid man.
Will he make the best?
He's never done anything.
Will he do something with Brexit? Because if I became Prime Minister, we can but dream, my first announcement will be that we are going to make a success of Brexit.
I would, if I was Prime Minister, I would say we'd go back to Europe. I would.
Blimey.
I absolutely would.
What about the
back to square one?
The single market. He's going to the single market.
But what about the thing about there was a democratic vote and they voted to come out? So you just throw that democracy away?
No, you do another referendum.
You get the right answer.
No, because
that's what you're saying.
All the polls say that so many people have changed their minds since they've seen the reality and the chaos that's ensued.
What they've seen is the reality and chaos of not doing Brexit properly.
Well, the thing is, one of the reasons that people say that they wanted Brexit was to have sovereignty so that we could rule over ourselves. Well, we've ruled all of ourselves and made a complete pig's ear of it.
I tell you something, it didn't take us long to get back to Brexit, did it? It's the hardy perennial. Listen, I've got so much for you in the final part of the show, what they call the D block in the TV industry. What have I got in the D block? Well, I've got a top Fleet Street insider with a shocking new exclusive about potential turnout on the 4th of July. Does make for good reading. Plus, we've got our Nigel Farage Twitter poll. Should Nigel Farage strike an 11th hour deal with the Conservatives? The results are in. I shall reveal all next. Plus, the Sunday Times front page. Lots to get through. Don't go anywhere.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mervyn Kirsch was a boy when the war began. By D-Day, he was trained and ready to fight after years waiting.
It was taking a long time. I suppose I was an agitator.
He remembers reality unfolding to the sound of thumping guns.
In the morning, about 5 o'clock, they woke me up to say we were going towards France now, and I could see the outline in the dawn. And I could hear couldn't see, but I could hear the shells, big shells going overhead both ways. Nobody was bothering to fire at me, which was quite good. Then I began to feel nervous, and I sort of realised it's not just an adventure, it's actual World War.
Mervyn served in the Ordnance Regiment. His job was to get supplies like ammunition and vehicles onto the beach. When an advance party, including some of his friends, were destroyed, Mervyn stepped up.
The head of me went to a reconnaissance unit. We were supposed to go on D+6. The reconnaissance unit was going D+2 to find a suitable site for 200 drivers and 1,000 vehicles, which we were going to stock, all kinds. They went across, but they didn't get across. They were torpedoed, the only boat torpedoed that day. I was put on a boat that night, any boat, going across, and told to find a suitable site for vehicles and men. So I just crossed over and I landed, got to the top of the cliff, and just with a strange driver in a track vehicle, told him just to drive down one of the roads and see what we can find.
The People's Channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but it's actually about you.
And we won't ever forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
Now more than ever, it's important to hear
all sides as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's election channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Got the money.
Listen, folks, let's have a look at some of your messages. gbnews.com/your say. A big reaction to my Stephen Fry take at 10. And how about this from Pete? Good evening, Pete. How are you? Pete says, look, I'm no fan of Stephen Fry in the slightest, yet Mark Dolan's character assassination of him after the news was rather pathetic and pointless. Obviously, there wasn't much else for MD to rant about. The whole rant was based around a joke from Stephen Fry that Mark Dolan failed to realise was a joke. Peter, thank you for that. Mark Dolan tonight is the home of diverse opinion, and yours is welcome, even if you're completely wrong. OK, listen, let's get two more front pages. We've got the Sunday Times now. Oh, let's do the poll. Thank you, Marky. Mark's done a great job, by the way, today. Dream team of Mark and Lottie and Harry and Alistair as well. Right, we've been asking, should Nigel Farage strike an 11th hour election deal with the Conservatives? 74.4% say no, whilst 25.6% say yes. OK, and now the last of the front pages. It is the Sunday Times. And British gangs moving cocaine cash millions to Dubai in suitcases. Starmer's triple lock pledge on not hiking tax. Manifesto will set out a 5-year freeze on big three taxes after Tory claim of £2,000 rise. Daring raid returns Gaza motorcycle hostage. And Hunt, 6-figure earners need help. Jeremy Hunt has suggested that he wants people earning more than £100,000 to keep more of their money, arguing that removing tax cliff edges would help boost Britain's productivity. And volunteer army search for missing TV doctor Michael Mosley. OK, let's get the inside track on all of the big stories around the general election with our top Fleet Street insider, the editor of the independent newspaper, David Maddox. David, lovely to see you. And you've got an exclusive for your paper about turnout on July the 4th. Tell me more.
Yeah, hi, Mark. Yeah, basically, we've been doing some analysis of the polling. We've got people like John Curtis and Robert Hayward involved as well. And Tech the UK have done a lot of polling for us. And basically, the conclusion is that we're heading for the lowest turnout in general election history, certainly in modern general election history. And the essence of this is that clearly the Conservative voters have lost confidence in their party. Loads of them are staying at home. Loads of them are just completely lost it with Rishi Sunak and the rest of it. But the problem is that Labour have failed to seal the deal on this, and Starmer is not picking up new voters. It may well be that he wins just simply because Labour voters turn out and nobody else does, and he's going to win by a lot. But he's not picking up new voters, and it's I think it's going to be a long-term problem, actually.
It is a real worry. We need everyone voting. Doesn't matter how they vote, but that they vote is critical to our democracy. So are you suggesting that perhaps fed-up Tory voters are also looking at the polls and thinking, well, the Tories have already lost, there's no point voting for Rishi Sunak?
I think so, yes. I think that's a big reason for it. Certainly after the D-Day fiasco last week, that seemed to completely finish it off, frankly. I mean, it'd been a terrible election campaign anyway. And you just see a huge amount of them not wanting to come out. Now, the one thing I think that might change it, of course, is reform closing the gap. If reform goes ahead, and suddenly you've got a dynamic where a reform vote might actually be quite useful, quite successful, then some of these Conservative voters may actually, or some more of these Conservative voters, may start backing Nigel and co.
Indeed. Well, stay with us, David. Let's bring my top pundits in on the conversation. Nina Mishkov, Christopher Biggins and Neil Wallace. And look, who could blame the voters, Christopher Biggins, for not bothering this time round? I mean, the public disaffection with the political class is at an all-time low.
Well, I think I personally can't think of anybody to vote for. I think it's so ridiculous what's going on at the moment. It's all to do with egos. It's all to do with... nothing to do with getting the country out of the mess that it's in. No one seems to be asking us what we want. And what we want to do about it.
And Biggins, there's an opportunity, there's an open goal. What do you want? What does Biggins want from his government over the next 5 years?
I'd like more housing for people. I'd like people to not have to go to food banks. I'd like there to be more money for people who need it. I think that we should be taxing a lot more people, higher income people. I think we should look at everything in order to make this a better country, the country that it should be and used to be.
What are your thoughts about this low turnout, Nina Mishkov? Is this a concern for our democracy?
It is a concern for our democracy, and the trouble is that Keir Starmer, as I said, has a charisma bypass. And so, therefore, although Labour has marvellous plans and ambitions...
And you'd like a Labour government?
I'd prefer Larry the Cat to the current government. But I don't vote Labour, but I'm happy to see Keir Starmer go in there and do what he can. I personally think that voting should be obligatory. It should be illegal not to vote.
Oh, what do you think about that, Neil Wallace? If turnout becomes a problem, should the public be forced by law to cast their votes?
By golly, Nina, there's something we agree with. This is the
We've all had a drink. Yeah.
This is the Australian system.
Yes.
Whereby you're allowed to go and waste your vote, but you have to turn up. And I think it makes a lot of sense. I think this finding of the independent poll is absolutely deeply revealing 2 weeks in, and what it shows is, with the Tories at their lowest ebb, Keir Starmer is as dull as ditch water, and he cannot inspire a reaction from the public to support the party that ought to be absolutely strolling through the front door. He is utterly uninspirational. And you saw it in the head-to-head with Sunak, actually. He completely missed the opportunity to tackle head-on this thing about the 2000 tax. What was it? He avoided discussing it 5 consecutive times before, after a break, his people got to him, and he then went head-to-head with it. He's a dull, uninspired.
But he's a decent man. He's a decent, solid.
We don't
we've
know
had,
that,
we've had personality. We've had personality. We've had fireworks with Boris.
One at a time. You're saying we've no idea. We can't be sure that Keir Starmer's a good man. Why not?
Because
his father's a toolmaker.
Well, apparently, you could say
wife works for the NHS.
Yes, but the point being, he was a man who stood shoulder to shoulder with Jeremy Corbyn. Backed every one of Jeremy Corbyn's policies, backed getting rid of the nuclear deterrent. As soon as it suited him, he changed his view 180 degrees.
Not a valid argument.
A single ounce of sincerity in his body. He will do whatever he can.
This shows he's a good politician. He's a good politician, and you can only change. You can only change the party from inside. You cannot change it from outside. You can't just.
So what? You can't just
rock up.
Let Nina make her point now, and I'll come back to you.
You can't just rock up and say, "Well, I'm a member of the Labour Party. I'm not a member of the Labour government. I want to change the party." You have to become a member of the Labour government and then change it from the inside. And tactically and strategically, he's done that. And what he's done with the Labour Party since he became leader, he's quelled the left. He's got rid of anti-Semitism, and he's made the party electable, which it was not. One of the reasons that Boris had such a huge majority in 2019 was that people were terrified of Jeremy Corbyn, and he has changed all that. The very fact that in these short years that they are going to actually win the election is down to him.
Neil, over to you. Last word.
Yes, Jeremy Corbyn they were terrified of. Jeremy Corbyn's right-hand man was the man you're now lauding.
Yeah, I've told you it's not a valid argument.
Okay.
He's a politician.
For Corbyn.
He is a politician.
Dishonesty is his middle name.
They're all dishonest.
David Maddox, you know that a week is a long time in politics. We're not home and hosed, are we? It's a good few weeks until the election. Anything could happen. Is there anything that Rishi Sunak could do to move the dial? The guy's got nothing to lose, which surely presents him with an opportunity.
I just don't know what he can do. He's literally thrown everything at it. You know, we've had national service, triple lock plus. You know, apparently invented £2,000 tax hikes with Labour. We've had everything. I mean, you know, he's up against, Mr. Dull, Mr. U-turn, and he can't land a blow. Diane Abbott was trying to do him a favour by that whole argument about her candidacy. Our other poll story, actually from the same poll, is that had zero effect on the Labour vote, the whole Diane Abbott row.
Yeah.
And, I just don't see how Labour don't come back with a huge majority. I mean, I just try to imagine what it would be like if we had somebody like Tony Blair now, back in the sort of 1997 version of Tony Blair. You know, we might be looking at no Conservative MPs at all at this rate.
Wow.
And it's just, that's the situation we're in.
Brilliant. Listen, always a treat to have you on the show. My thanks to David Maddox, who is the editor of The Independent. Check out that brilliant paper and that exclusive on voter turnout. Thank you to my amazing pundits today, to Nina, to Neil, and to Biggins, and my brilliant team the other side of the glass. And most importantly, to you for watching on TV or listening on the radio. I'm back tomorrow for Mark Dolan tonight. Big Opinion, Take at 10, and much more. See you at 9. Headliners is next.
Warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. The weather stays rather mixed across the UK over the next few days, a mixture of sunshine and showers, and staying quite chilly for the time of year too. The cool conditions are all down to a northerly airstream, low pressure anchored towards the northeast of the UK, high pressure out towards the west, and that's generating that northerly flow across all parts. So looking at things in more detail for this evening and through the overnight period, we'll see showers towards the north and northwest of the UK, quite blustery winds, so many of those showers rattling through quite quickly. The rain giving way to more persistent outbreaks as we head into the early hours of Sunday, particularly across Northern Ireland and the southwest of Scotland, whereas across England and Wales the cloud tends to melt away, so it will turn quite chilly here by Sunday morning. In fact, in rural spots, we could see temperatures into low single figures, giving a touch of grass frost in one or two places, pretty unusual for this time of the year. Looking at things in more detail for early on Sunday, and towards the northeast of Scotland we'll see a mixture of sunshine and showers, quite a brisk northwesterly winds. Then we run into an area of more persistent rain across Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, parts of northwest England, whereas elsewhere across England and Wales it's set fair, quite a chilly start. There'll be plenty of sunshine around, and we'll hold on to some sunshine here, certainly through the morning on Sunday before cloud starts to increase from the north. Whereas across Northern Ireland we hold on to outbreaks of rain on and off through the day, and that rain slipping its way southeastwards across southwest Scotland into northern England and eventually parts of North Wales too. Further north it's a case